Today's episode of Behind These Walls takes us to Ivor's Holleman house, which a handful of historic references identify as Mayfield. The house has remained in the same family since construction, and in the family cemetery are relatives of Christopher Holleman, who died in 1691.
Well, we moved in about 17 years ago. We came here with a 10-year-old and a 16-year-old, and they were ready to start their new life on the farm, and we were ready to start. It didn't take a lot of convincing to convince two boys to come to a farm. We promised them what? Puppies and four-wheelers. Loved it ever since.
I grew up here, and when I was 17, I moved to Charlottesville, and then after a stint in college, I met my lovely bride in Charlottesville. And so we were there for 25 years. And then after my grandmother passed away, there was nobody living in the house at the time, and just some unforeseen events in our lives in Orange County gave us an opportunity to come back down here and move back here. So it was more of a homecoming for me.
Christopher Holleman Sr. was barely 20 years old when he sailed to the New World in 1650. By 1661, he purchased land on the south side of the James River and farmed several hundred acres of tobacco along Cypress Creek. He purchased more land along Cypress Swamp in 1668, and in 1684 patented a large amount of land between Mill Swamp and the Blackwater River. Tobacco was the cash crop of Virginia and was the mainstay of its colonial economy. In his 1691 will, Holleman denotes his tobacco barns, confirming that tobacco was his financial foundation. The exact location of the original home is unclear. However, on the Holleman land, descendant Wilson Holleman began construction of this federal-style dwelling with a hipped and gable roof in 1830.
I first came to this house in 1941. The property was established back in the 1680s. So it's been here a long time.
The 100,000 bricks needed for the house were made on site, most likely by slave labor.
When we took down the two outbuildings that had chimneys on them, I tried to save all of the whole brick and the whole halves so that when we do renovations or have to do repairs, we'll have some of the original brick that was made on the farm.
18 inches thick, the walls are laid in American bond.
The brick kiln was over there somewhere. And I think the clay was taken off this field over here as well. The west-facing field has a high clay content, which leads me to believe that the clay could have come from there.
Across the front of the house, Wilson and his wife Anne adorn the construction date of 1830. On the back are large iron letters, W and AH for the builders. The land has been farmed since the 17th century. The Hollemans now lease it, and as in the past, it continues to produce corn, peanuts, and soybeans. Many of the original outbuildings or their foundations are still found on the property.
This is the old smokehouse. This is the old kitchen that came off from the house. This was the main building right here where we housed the corn, stored the corn and hay up in the top of the building. And this was more or less the workshop in this area right here. And these are the fields on both sides that are still farmed today. This was my bedroom growing up as a child. And this wardrobe is what we always had for closets. Instead of having a closet in the house, we had wardrobes like that.
In 1985, the state's largest swamp oak, which shaded the house for 150 years, was a victim of a sudden storm. The tree, weakened with age, split and fell. Tradition indicates that it was planted when the handsome brick home was built. Family stories are a big part of the house's tradition.
We used to store potatoes until they sent me down to get some sweet potatoes one time. And I reached into the pine straw and I said, "Whoa, that's a rotten potato." And my daddy always told me, don't let one potato touch another potato because it'll make that one rotten. So I said, well, I need to get that rotten one out. And I went back and pulled it out, and it was a black snake. We didn't store potatoes down there anymore.
Come on into the cemetery.
The cemetery is interesting as it is prominently featured in the yard near the house, honoring the family's ancestors. It contains a very unusual grave for an infant who died in 1888. The seldom seen iconography depicts a hand reaching down and grasping a rosebud.
We're in the family cemetery, and we're looking at the stone of Wilson Holleman, who built the house here on the farm. And his wife Ann is on this grave site.
The house has seen some updates and renovations over the years. The two-story Georgian-style porch was added in 1917, and the freestanding kitchen, which was positioned at the back of the house, was relocated to the side yard. Additionally, the home's central hallway was closed off to conserve heat. It was Louise Holleman who is credited for bringing the house into the modern era.
I knew of the home here. We would visit his grandmother that lived here. It needed a lot of updating, and we would leave and I'd say, whew, ready to go back to, you know, a house with heat and air and a dishwasher and things.
Running water, a bathroom.
Isabel that came through and took a lot of the roof off, a lot of water damage, and that's when my father-in-law started the renovations and modernizing the inside of the home.
As with all homes, other modern conveniences such as central baseboard heat came later. Inside and out, the house's architectural details are sophisticated. All of the downstairs rooms are paneled to the chair rails, while the frames for the deep-set windows and mantels for the 6 fireplaces are hand-carved. The front stairway is open with a turn at the landing, and the back stairway is enclosed. All doors are oversized, as are the sawtooth cornices. The Federal-style highlights of the exterior included balanced positioning of doors and windows, double-hung sash windows, and shutters.
It's been a wonderful house. It's a nice, safe haven for the families that have lived here. Wonderful community and neighbors. I personally have enjoyed it, and it will always be home.
Yeah, I love it. It's a real honor to live in a place like this.